What is up, Saturday? Welcome on into Let's Bet It. Lauren Jabari here with Mark Zinno. Zinno, it's Saturday and there's some crazy Week 10 college football games today. How are you?
It's a huge, huge day in college football. Obviously, the Georgia-Tennessee matchup drawing every eyeball in the country right now. 3:30 kickoff Eastern right here in Georgia. So we got our eyes fixated on that, but still just a great slate today, Lauren. A lot of interesting games out there.
So many interesting games. The Week 10 slate, we have 5 of them to break down for you. Then we're going to deep dive into the Pac-12 a little bit. We have Tim Murray coming on from VSiN, so that's going to be fun to talk to him about college football playoff odds, national championship odds for Heisman Trophy winner. I'm still holding on to that Hendon Hooker 60-1 ticket, and so I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
This is your day. If Hendon Hooker pulls
I
out a
really
win
hope
today,
not.
Tennessee pulls out a win, he is going to win the Heisman.
That's
all
would
you
be
need.
Crazy.
All you need to Tennessee is just to win this thing, and your 66-1 ticket is going to dance all the way to the window.
Seriously, fingers crossed, and I'm really hoping for it. Let's get right into that game. Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. Starting it off with Tennessee taking on Georgia. Now, the committee puts Georgia at 3. They put Ohio State above them. The Vols obviously ranked number 1. And the Vols have played the game of the season already against Alabama. This, though, has the potential, Zeno, to be the game of the century at this point. The Vols have the number 1 total offense, scoring 49.4 points per game, but they haven't faced a defense yet like Georgia, or a front 7 like Georgia, like the Dogs do, that really smother you, right? This storyline is the Vols offense taking on Georgia's defense. Who do you think reigns supreme in this matchup?
All right, so let's just kind of back up a little bit, because the money all week long has been pouring in on Tennessee, right? Like it opened up at 9, money poured in on Tennessee, and it came down 8.5, and it sat at 8.5, 8 for a better part of the week, more at 8.5. And it should tell you a lot that money kept coming in on Tennessee, and that line never, ever moved down below 8. Why? Because there are people like me who are waiting for a 7 to pop up so you could hammer Georgia. It never got close. In fact, Lauren, it's moved back up to 9 as late respected money has come in on the Georgia Bulldogs here. So there's that backdrop behind this thing. Look, I can tell you honestly, I'm not going to get to the window on this game. I can't figure out what side I really want to be on. I think that there are plausible arguments for both of these teams to win the game. I think there's plausible arguments for both these teams to cover the game. I would tell you, because our good friends here at Pickswise and Pickswise.com forced me to make a play, I did take the points. Because guess what? I mean, we've seen situations where 90% of the tickets are on one side, the public is heavily backing one side, and guess what? It ends up hitting that way. So, but the matchup for me, Lauren, I know we've talked about Tennessee's offense versus Georgia's defense and all that, but in reality, I think the game is going to be decided with Georgia's offense and Tennessee's defense, because we keep undervaluing Georgia's offense as a top 5 offense in this country. They're second in yards per game. They score 40 points a game just like Tennessee does. So they can get out there and score. I think, when I'm as a game script guy, I think that this game will be decided by how much Kirby Smart wants to have these long, protracted, extending, time-killing drives. If you go back to Georgia's opening game against Oregon, which we have long forgotten about and don't really see it as a win that it is, because Georgia kicked their butts back in week 1. But you have to look at the drive chart. Georgia went 8 plays. They went 12 plays. They went 6 plays. They went 8 plays in scoring on their drives in the first half. That's what they have to do offensively in the game. The easiest way to keep your boy, Hendon Hooker, from winning the Heisman is to keep him off the field. and let Georgia do these long drives. And I think if they do that, it's not a stretch for them to go out and cover this game, because if they can force a punt or two early and get Tennessee in a situation where they are down 14-0, down 17-0, then guess what? Tennessee is going to be at a disadvantage because Georgia can pin their ears back and they won't run the ball and they'll have to throw their way out of it. Now, on the converse side of that, as I ramble on here, Lauren, can Tennessee throw their way back into any game? Of course they can, right? Like, that's what they do better than most in the country. So I think this game plays out a lot of different ways. It's a real tough handicap, I think, on both sides. Anybody who I respect in this industry who has broken down this game, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. And they're both on opposite sides of it. So I'll defer to you. Where are you on this game?
I'm taking Tennessee in the points. It's actually my best bet of the day. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the game. Yeah, we'll talk. There's some books I actually got it at 9.5. There's books that have gone up to 9.5 at this point to get it. That's
it's moving back in favor of Georgia.
Yeah. So it's hard to kind of read this spot, but you were talking about Georgia's offense. They have the perimeter speed to throw at Tennessee secondary as well. This is going to be such a fun game to watch. I mean, like, to be honest with you, I want to take Tennessee on the money line just because, like, that's more of a heart bet for me, though. But taking the points seems like a little bit more of a safe bet at this point. Do you think I hedge my Hendon Hooker bet with a Georgia bet?
I bet here,
or do I kind of?
I mean, okay, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, you put $100 down on Hendon Hooker in the Heisman, right? Like, the hedge here would be 50 on Georgia. I mean, again, the Georgia money line is not really favorable for you, right?
Yeah,
so you don't want,
right?
Right. So if you put $50 on the Georgia money line, you're going to get like $12 back. So there's not really a favorable hedge because of where that money line sits. And to lay the 9 points is tough just because it's like I'm laying a 2 score to try to hedge back. It's not a very favorable hedge position. If this was a money line, that was minus 150, minus 175, sure. Maybe throw another $100 down on it and hope Georgia wins outright. And look, maybe even if Georgia wins by a field goal and Hendon Hooker has a great game, he still wins a Heisman and you win both bets. I would add one more thing as far as this game from a handicap perspective. Although I think Georgia could win a shootout with Tennessee, I don't think that's the most favorable game script for them. They don't want to be in a back and forth score situation with Tennessee because you're talking about the offense that could score the quickest and the fastest in the country. Tennessee, for all of the points that they score, is bottom 5 in America in time of possession. They just don't need the ball that often to score. So Georgia has to limit the big plays, okay, and they've got to kill a lot of clock, and that's the game script that they want to sit in. But, yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Lauren. I don't know that there's necessarily a bad bet on Tennessee here to take the points, especially if you're getting it at 9.5. And it's not really much different in the odds maker's eyes between 8 and 10, right?
Yeah.
So anything in between feels like a dead number. Nothing's really going to land on 9. And with that, I don't think it's a bad bet to take Tennessee by any stretch of the imagination. But the hedge here seems tough. I don't know if there's a real favorable play.
Yeah, no hedge. I'm all in on Tennessee, all in on Hendon Hooker at this point. I'm actually at a wedding in the mountains in North Carolina right now this weekend. Everybody, I'm telling you, everybody went to Georgia. So do not tell anybody that I'm taking Tennessee in the points. I mean, Georgia can still win this game, but, I think I would be like exiled from the wedding. I wouldn't be allowed to be here. What about Alabama taking on LSU? Who'd have thought heading into week 10 that LSU would be ranked 10th in the college football ranking system? Brian Kelly actually has a shot at the SEC West against Alabama. Just Bama has so many great pieces, but you look at Jaden Daniels. He's been tough to stop for other teams the last few weeks as well. But it's hard to not back Alabama in this spot. How do you think this game plays out?
Okay, I don't think enough people are talking about this game. Like, we've been so hyper-focused on Tennessee, Georgia. Why aren't people talking about Alabama, LSU? Now, there are a ton of people in this industry who I respect and really sharp people who I know and follow. Pretty much all of them are on LSU. So I'm going to be a man on an island here this week. And I'm back in Alabama. I laid the 12.5 earlier in the week. I think LSU is overrated. I think Brian Kelly is overrated. I mean, I understand that LSU is coming off a big win over Ole Miss, and they dominated in the second half. But this is just, for me, about a difference of talent that is at Alabama that is not at LSU. Like, I get that Brian Kelly's there and he's reinvigorated this team, but these were players last year that were on a really bad team. and they're all still here. Like, I get Jaden Daniels, was bad at Arizona State, and he had a bad coach in Herm Edwards, I guess, and Brian Kelly's made him a little bit better. But I think there are a couple of things here. Bryce Young at quarterback for Alabama, and Jahmyr Gibbs. LSU has got a good run defense, but I think Nick Saban today is going to get Jahmyr Gibbs involved in the passing game, use it as an extension of the run game. Alabama should be able to throw the ball wherever the hell they want today. I mean, honestly, like, I don't know that there's anybody on LSU and when I know these aren't the Alabama receivers from last year, but this is just a situation here where not enough people are giving Alabama credit. We so quickly want to write down the Alabama death story and be able to say it's over. And then every year Nick Saban goes out and goes, hey, guess what? I'm still here. Outside of that, outside of Joe Burrow winning a game a couple of years ago, Alabama's won 10 of the last 11 in this matchup. He's dominated Brian Kelly both times he faced him when he was at Notre Dame. I feel like Alabama gets up early in this one. LSU is going to be playing catch-up. It's not a game script I like them in at all, to be able to have to come back in a game. Remember, Ole Miss last week was only leading 2017 at halftime. It wasn't like LSU roared back. And you're talking about Dart, who didn't have a good game, and they didn't have their running back Evans didn't even play in the game, their best running back. So, they didn't get the full complement of Ole Miss last week. I think that they are a little bit overrated, LSU is. I'm back in Alabama today. It's one of my favorite plays. Let's see how it turns out. If I'm wrong because I know a lot of sharp people are on LSU because it's a ton of points. But that says there's a reason why Alabama is favored by this much.
And there's a lot of points for a reason. Alabama now 13.5-point favorites. You got it at 12.5. The spread now 13.5 at this point. This next line confuses me a little bit. Texas laying 2.5 points against a 13th ranked Kansas State team. Texas coming off of a bye, and the week before they blew a second half lead against Oklahoma State. And then you look last week, Kansas State is coming off of a 48-0 win over Oklahoma State, and Texas is still favored in this game. Please explain this to me. I know it's a battle between two of the best running backs in the Big 12, Deuce Vaughn, Bijan Robinson, but still, it just doesn't make sense.
You mean, look, this a couple of weeks ago, I'll just reiterate it for the audience. I'm never laying points with Steve Sarkisian. Just not, especially on the road. I'm just not going to do it. Like, you will not get my money in that department. So, and this is another game a lot of people are on opposite sides on. And really it boils down to, for me, is Adrian Martinez going to start for Kansas State? Or is it going to be Colin Wilson? Is that his name? I forget Will backup. I can't remember his name. The backup quarterback, Will Howard. Thank you. I don't know why I said Colin Wilson. Maybe there's a Will in there somewhere. But regardless, I don't. If Adrian Martinez starts, I feel better about taking Kansas State in this spot. If he doesn't, then it's sort of more of a coin flip situation here. I mean, both of these teams statistically are very similar. Texas is better at the pass. Kansas State's better at the run. If you want to say the one has one strength over the other, K-State, look, it's a tough place to play. Again, I don't have a strong on this game, Lauren, either way. I just know I'm never laying points with Steve Sarkisian on the road. So it's K-State or pass for me. Probably lean on K-State at a short number, especially if you get it under a field goal. I don't think it's a terrible bet, but I could see a couple of ways where Quinn Ewers takes over this game for this Texas offense and begins to put K-State in a negative game script. Again, something else I don't think they're very good at getting out of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it still just confuses me because at this point, Texas, blew a lead to Oklahoma State, and then Kansas State came out and beat them 48-0, held them to no points in this spread. It doesn't make sense. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around it. Another line that's been moving quite a bit, not necessarily the spread, but the total because of weather. Clemson going on into South Bend, taking on Notre Dame, Fighting Irish. The last time the Clemson played in front of Touchdown Jesus, they were ranked number 1. And it ended in a loss, and it was back in 2020. My brother was a senior there. He was one of the students that was storming the field. This year, Clemson has a real shot to win the ACC and possibly get into the college football playoff. ND has been up and down all season, but they have the size up front, in my opinion, to slow down the Clemson run game. They also dropped 40-plus points on the ACC 2 best teams in wins, and the weather is nuts for this game. My dad and mom are there. Both of my brothers are there. They're saying it's up to 40-mile-an-hour winds and rain. I'm like, that's horrible. But Clemson has won 14 straight games. It's the longest win streak in the country, longest active win streak in the country. DJU has started in every single one of those games. And ND has won 26 straight regular season games against ACC opponents. So trends kind of favor both teams in this spot. How are you leaning? Because I'm leaning Notre Dame +4.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't play Clemson here. It's Notre Dame or pass. The running game should be really interesting. Clemson has Will Shipley, who's been fantastic this year, and DJU, by the way, DJU Uiagalelei, is returning to play Notre Dame. This is where he made his first start and emerged as a future star. So there's a lot on the line here for Clemson, and this is the real last chance that Clemson has to get upset and beat by anybody. Oh, by the way, side note, I was objectionably insulted that Clemson was put at number 4 in the college football playoff rankings. Michigan is better than Clemson. Alabama is better than Clemson.
Thank
I think
you.
Clemson. I didn't think they think Clemson should be left out of the top 6, but TCU is a real argument to be above Clemson, as do Michigan, Alabama, and in my opinion, Oregon. That was the one thing I thought was upsetting. They haven't played anybody. What's their best win? NC State? Like I don't
probably.
Their best win over Wake Forest, a game that they got pushed to overtime, where they gave up 45 points. I mean, I just think Clemson is, for as much as I've been pumping them as a team that could get to the college football playoff all year long because of the conference that they play in, I don't know that necessarily they are as good, comparatively speaking, to the other teams. Aside from that, I agree with you. The weather is going to throw a wrench into this game here. It's going to be ground and pound for 4 quarters. It's going to be slow and sluggish, and I would give the slight edge to Notre Dame at home here and take the points, especially when you're over a field goal. And oh, by the way, with the weather, Lauren, college kickers are irritating as it is. They are unreliable and disappointing, and pick the word you want. But this could come down to a missed field goal barrage in this game. Which kicker can actually make a kick in these awful conditions that are going to be out there in 40-mile-an-hour winds? You have to wonder how much coaches for both teams, whether it's Marcus Freeman or Dabo Swinney, who's going to have to decide to go for it on 4th down in certain spots or kick a field goal. That's going to change this game a lot. Under looks like a decent play as well, although that total has been plummeting all week long. So I got to tell you, I mean, this is going to be a fun and interesting game to watch tonight.
I'm really excited about it. For more on this, let's bring in Tim Murray. I know he's waiting in the wings right now. I'm co-host of VSiN's Primetime, 6 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and VSiN College Football Betting Pod. Tim, you are a big Notre Dame fan. I feel like this could be a really good spot for them. This could be a really good spot for them to come and beat up on a Clemson team, ruin their chances of getting into the college football playoff, because this is not going to be a game where these quarterbacks are throwing. The run game is what it's going to be about, with 40-mile-an-hour winds, which is like almost like hurricane weather. But ND, they have the size up front to slow down Clemson's run game, in my opinion, and I feel like it's a really good spot for them.
Yeah, I'll just say this. This is a game that I have not bet. Last week, I thought the Syracuse spot was it was wonderful for people who bet like I do, which is, sell high, buy low. Everybody thought Syracuse was actually good, and we learned, maybe not. And when you have a 260-pound nose tackle against that offensive line, Notre Dame's going to run it down your throat. I don't know if Notre Dame could have that much success, as much success this week, guys, as they did last week against Clemson, but it's going to be a similar game plan. I will say this about the weather. From my understanding, since it is a night game, the wind is going to dissipate a little bit. It's not going to be the 40 and 50-mile-an-hour winds that we're going to see in, Iowa against, Purdue earlier in the day, or Northwestern Ohio State. So that's, I don't know if the wind is going to be as big of a factor as maybe we thought early in the week, but certainly something to keep an eye on. I do lean the under, guys, in this game, just because I think you look back at Notre Dame and Ohio State, what the game plan was there. My biggest worry and concern is Drew Pine. It all comes down to the quarterback play. Notre Dame does not have, massive weapons out wide. Neither does Clemson. And I think Drew Pine, over the last 3 games, to be honest, has really kind of regressed. I was impressed with the way he played on the road at North Carolina. I watched him in person here in Vegas against BYU, and I thought he was, stepping up and going through his progressions and playing better. And now these last 3 games, the Stanford game, the UNLV game, and last week against Syracuse, look, Drew Pine can't go 9 of 19 tonight with an interception and Notre Dame wins like he did last week. So, I agree with what you guys were saying. I was listening, to your breakdown of Notre Dame Clemson. I agree with you, Mark. I think this is the last opportunity. If you don't want Clemson in the playoff, this is it, because I don't believe in North Carolina. I think they're a bit fraudulent. Yes, they're great offensively, but they're a disaster offensively. You could poke a lot of holes in what they've done to this point. Yes, they're 7-1. Congratulations, and they'll probably be in the ACC championship game. But I just don't see them having enough to beat Clemson in Charlotte in early December. So if you don't want Clemson in the playoff, this is it tonight. No official play for me on this game. I've heard varying opinions from one side or the other. What was interesting, guys, and it was just one sports book, but here in Las Vegas, I was talking to Chris Andrews from the South Point, and I expected this to be one of the more lopsided public games, and it still could happen as the day goes on. But as of last night, he said it was pretty even with ticket count. So a lean towards the under, if anything, in this one for me. And I'll just sit back and hope that my Irish can do what they did in 2020, which was win in an instant classic against Clemson.
That was so much
Tim,
fun.
let's get to some of your plays here. In a game that I wanted to get to the window on, but ultimately stayed off, Texas Tech and TCU. Part of TCU for me has been like, how much longer can they survive this gauntlet? They played 4 consecutive top 20 opponents, won all of those games. Really were only pushed in one of them, and that was the game against Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State was banged up in that game a lot. But Texas Tech has started to fade a little bit here down the stretch. They haven't looked great in 3 of their last 4 games. I know they beat up on West Virginia. If this game was in Lubbock, Texas, I would be all over TCU and the points here. I'm sorry, Texas Tech and the points here. But I have a hard time trusting that defense. I have a hard time trusting the fact that, they are pretty one-dimensional offensively. Where do you sit on this game, and can you back TCU to continue this winning streak?
Yeah, I took the points, Mark, in this game. So I'm on Texas Tech. I like the situational spot. As you mentioned, I mean, you go back last week, I wouldn't consider it as a gauntlet of a game, but it was 34-31. And my condolences if anyone had, like I did, West Virginia plus 7.5. Maybe the gambling gods. Maybe the gambling gods will have a little karma there on TCU for throwing it into the end zone for no reason at the end of the game. Through that stretch here, Mark, one game before they go start this Big 12 run, they play their rival SMU, Sonny Dykes' former team. They win that game. Then they start this stretch of all these ranked teams in the Big 12. Some fortune certainly goes their way when they're down 18 against Kansas State. And not only does Adrian Martinez get knocked out, but also Will Howard gets knocked out. Now you're looking at a third-string quarterback. You look at, Jason Bean has to step in for Jalen Daniels, who, by the way, Jason Bean is expected to start again tonight. Jalen Daniels could play for Kansas. So I look at that, and yes, Texas Tech last week did not look good against Baylor. They have their issues. But what's interesting about this Texas Tech teams, guys, if you look at some of the advanced numbers, Texas Tech's actually pretty good defensively. It's not the Cliff Kingsbury, Mike Leach Texas Tech teams. They have some ability defensively. I think they could slow this TCU team down enough. And then, I do like looking at what's ahead. What did they just play and what's ahead? Well, TCU has to go on the road and play Texas next week. Their former coach, Gary Patterson, is on that staff. It's a primetime game on ABC. I mean, what a big opportunity for TCU. And now they got to play Texas Tech, 11 a.m. local start. So I just think this could be kind of a sleepwalking type of spot. So I'll take north of a touchdown with Texas Tech, and we'll see if Max Duggan can throw a late touchdown to ruin my day yet again in this spot.
I like it. I really do. Oklahoma State, man, they struggled last week. They got shut out, didn't even score, didn't even see the end zone, not a field goal, not nothing. Now they're taking on Kansas this week, who's coming off the loss last week. This game about to pick them. Kansas laying 1.5. How do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, and Pete Thamel and I think Brett McMurphy both reporting the same thing, that Jason Bean will start today for Kansas, but Jalen Daniels has a chance to play. I'll be honest, guys, that doesn't really factor all that much in my handicap here in this game. I do think Jalen Daniels is superior to Jason Bean, but I think the thing that much more factors into it is who's playing quarterback for Oklahoma State. They have
Mm-hmm.
not ruled out Spencer Sanders yet, but from all accounts, from everything I've heard this week, it will likely be Gunnar Gundy, the head coach's son, starting at quarterback, a no-star recruit, a redshirt freshman, got thrown into action last week against Kansas State. I'll be honest, I would have loved if Oklahoma State showed a little bit of a pulse against Kansas State, because I would have faded them even harder here. But this is a stretch, and Mark, you were kind of alluding to it with TCU. I at this time of year, I like to look at these types of spots where who's coming off of a gauntlet of games and who's coming off a bye. And that's the situation we have in Lawrence today. Look, Kansas is a team, and I'll be honest, I did write-ups for VSiN.com, and I faded Kansas 3 consecutive weeks. It was Iowa State, then it was TCU, and then it was Oklahoma. And I got 2-1 against Kansas, America's team at the time. But America changed its mind very quickly, guys. They've lost 3 in a row. They're on a bye. They're no longer ranked. College game day already went there. Okay, we're good. We don't need you anymore. That's where I jump in. I'm all in on Rock Chalk today because this is the spot. Guys, they haven't been to a bowl game in 13 years. We know how much it is a struggle for the Jayhawks. And I know people roll their eyes. Oh, bowl games, they mean nothing. Well, some schools, they mean something. And I think for a school like Kansas, that had no success in football for a decade and a half, I think today is the day. Because you look at the remaining schedule, they have a road game at Texas Tech. Could they get that? Yeah, possibly. They have Texas at home. They have Kansas State. This is the day to get your 6th win, to kind of sit back and say, we accomplished what we wanted to do. We started 5-0. We're now going to a bowl game. And Oklahoma State is all sorts of banged up. In addition to the quarterback position, offensive line, running back, wide receiver, they are all banged up, guys. This will be their 6th consecutive game in the Big 12. Kansas is coming off a bye. I think Lance Leipold and his staff are very creative offensively, so give them a little extra time to prepare. So, yeah, give me Rock Chalk here today at a pick against Oklahoma State. Should be a pretty good crowd there in Lawrence as well as they try to get that 6th win and get bowl eligible.
I'll translate, Tim. Bowl games matter to basketball schools. Yes, that's pretty much what it boils down to. So,
and shouts to Duke, who got bowl eligible last night too. There we go.
Yeah.
Bowl games matter to basketball schools. We'll see you there, Kansas, Duke, and Kentucky. All right.
Maybe UConn. Maybe UConn.
Maybe UConn.
One win.
Sometime in 10 years. They got quite the run to get to get to 6.
Yeah, I don't know about UConn.
Over to the American, UCF Memphis. UCF in this offense putting up over 500 yards per game, one of the tops in the country, laying 3 in one of these American matchups. Late afternoon kick here at 3:30. You're back in Memphis today.
Yeah, this is of the 3. This would be the one where it's kind of more of the Samuel L. Jackson, hold on to your butts type of situation here, guys. But we're going to roll with Memphis here. Situationally, couldn't get much worse for UCF. What a thrilling victory last week over Cincinnati at the Bounce House, late touchdown to beat, what has been the AAC power these past couple of years in Cincinnati. And next week, oh, by the way, my partner in crime, Sean King's alma mater, who's 19th in the college football playoff rankings, is waiting in the wings. In the middle, you got to go on the road and play Memphis, who's coming off of a bye. And I do think this is a tricky spot for UCF. I don't love Memphis. They've lost 3 in a row. Some of them have been in kind of heartbreaking fashion. But, yeah, I'll lean towards the dog here in this spot. Memphis historically, now it's been different coaches, but historically, if you look at, Ole Miss and UCLA and Mississippi State, they've kind of gotten up for these games at the Liberty Bowl. I don't expect a massive crowd or anything like that. They do have a pretty good quarterback in Seth Hennigan who could throw it around. And, UCF's got question marks about their quarterback position. Is it going to be John Reese Plumlee, who got knocked out last week against Cincinnati with a concussion? I believe he was considered a game-time decision. Or is it going to be Mikey Keene? Now, Mikey Keene does have starting experience, so I don't think it's that massive of a drop-off there for the Golden Knights if they go to Mikey Keene today instead of John Reese Plumlee. But I do lean towards the dog here. This is a bit of a fishy spot, I would say. The numbers kind of moving in the direction of Memphis. So, yeah, I lean towards Memphis, in this spot. And just situationally, couldn't really be much worse for Central Florida, considering you're coming off of an emotional home victory against Cincinnati. Next week, there's a possibility, guys, that College Game Day could go to Tulane. I mean, other things would have to happen, but there's a real, they are on the list, I have been told by the Bear, Chris Felica. I wouldn't say they're the betting favorite, but there's an opportunity for Tulane to host College Game Day when UCF comes to town. But everyone's got to take care of their own business, and I don't know if UCF is going to respond all that well. So we'll see. I got the 3.5 here, and I'll be holding on for dear life against a pretty explosive offense in UCF.
Another basketball school trying to become full eligible. There you go. Memphis, go.
You see a trend here. You see a trend developing. I want to ask you one more question, Tim, before we let you go. It's about Heisman odds right now. Obviously, we're getting ready for one of the biggest games of the season today between Tennessee and Georgia. I had a Heisman ticket on Hendon Hooker at the beginning of the season, 66-1 odds. I'm still holding on to it at this point. He moved now above CJ Stroud, taking over as the favorite. He's minus 120 to win the Heisman at this point. And I know a lot of this rides on how this Vols-Dogs game plays out today. How do you feel about Hendon Hooker overcoming CJ Stroud now to be the favorite for the Heisman? And how do you think that game's going to play out today in Athens, Georgia?
Well, Lauren, I'll say first, well done, because that is great to have. And,
oh my God, I took a gamble, baby, and I'm like, holy crap, this is actually coming to fruition right now. Now I'm like stressed about it. I'm stressed.
What I would say, if you want to ensure profit, I would get a CJ Stroud ticket right now. I am of the belief that it's a two-man race. I know people are going to say, well, what about Blake Corum if he goes off and they beat Ohio State? Yeah, look, a lot of things can happen. I think it's possible. But if you are unlike Lauren, like I am, and do not have a 66-1 ticket or any ticket on Hendon Hooker in plus dollars, what I would do is, if you believe that Tennessee's going to win today, then I believe Hendon Hooker wins the Heisman Trophy. So what do we do with that? Take Tennessee on the money line. It's around plus 250. That would be the way to go, because in my eyes, guys, I don't believe there's any value at minus 120 on Hendon Hooker at this point in time, because if they win today, I think he wins the Heisman Trophy. Okay, go play them on the money line. If they lose today, he still has a shot, but that reopens the door for CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud's numbers are pretty comparable to Hendon Hooker. He doesn't have the Heisman moment that Hendon Hooker has with the Alabama win and the Georgia game, but that's coming, right? He's got the Ohio State game still waiting in the wings. He's got the Big Ten championship game as well if they were to beat Michigan. So I think that would be the way that I would go. If you have a ticket like Lauren, I would hedge off with CJ Stroud right now, just to, kind of peace of mind at plus 200 or so, I think you could find on CJ Stroud. Because if Tennessee loses today, personally, which I think they will, then I think CJ Stroud kind of resurfaces as, I wouldn't say the Heisman favorite, but a opportunity there. Because remember this, guys, and we've seen this in years past, even though it shouldn't, and it should be a full body of work, playing on that final weekend seems to be very vital to the Heisman Trophy candidacy. And if Tennessee loses today, they're not playing on that final weekend of the year. So that's the way I would look at it. I think Hendon Hooker almost locks it up if they win today on the road at Georgia. But if they don't, and I don't think they will, then I would look at CJ Stroud to either hedge off or as a good play. So I think there are a couple ways, in my opinion, to go about the Heisman Trophy. Yes, you could look long shots if you think, Michigan could beat Ohio State, or, Bryce Young, I think I saw as high as 33-1, and they have an opportunity, certainly on the road at Death Valley tonight, and then, a chance in the SEC championship. So if you want to take a long shot, Bryce Young, it's possible, but I really believe at this point in time, guys, it's a two-man race. And I think Hendon Hooker locks it up if they win today. So take them on the money line if you think Tennessee wins. If not, maybe buy your CJ Stroud ticket now and see how it goes the rest of the month in November.
I like it. I really do. Tim, we so appreciate you coming on the show. I know you woke up early. What time is it out there in Vegas? Bright and early?
7:30. We're good.
He's got a little
one. Okay, yeah.
We're good.
Little one has been up for a while. His little one has been up for a while. So.
Wearing my Army-Navy sweatshirt today for Zeno, though. So there you go.
Yes, I love it. And you have your Notre Dame pennant in the background too. So we're repping everybody today. Hey, best of luck to our Fighting Irish today. Best of luck.
All right, see you guys.
Thanks.
Bye, Tim. Thank you. Have a great Saturday. That was Tim Murray, co-host of VSiN's Primetime 6 to 9 p.m. and VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast. Now, before we get into our best bets of the day, let's talk about Superbook Sports for a second, because Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. Make sure to go to superbook.com and download the app today. This season, we're rooting for safeties. That's because Superbook's going to give you a $50 bonus on each safety scored this season. All you have to do is place a $100 pregame bet on any spread, any total, and if there's a safety scored in any game on Sunday, you get a $50 bonus. Make sure to visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Now, from superbook.com to Pickswise.com, 3-star play of the day. Who do we got today?
Well, outside of my 3-star play on the website, Lauren, which I will give you out in a minute, we have several other plays up on the website here in college football, NHL as well. There's a lot of interesting plays out there today, even a player prop as a 3-star play on the website today worth taking a look at. Again, Pickswise.com, the place to go for all the 3-star plays.
I like it. Okay, your 3-star play of the day that you have on the site, I'm sure you're going to tell us about one of them, so please enlighten us.
Well, I will do my best here, Lauren, to try and get us another winner. But we're going to the SEC, and no, it's not Tennessee, Georgia. No, it's not Alabama, LSU. Mississippi State hosting Auburn. Both these teams come into this matchup on losing streaks. Auburn's lost 4 in a row. Mississippi State has lost back-to-back. And the Bulldogs are coming off a bye, while the Tigers just fired their head coach after getting beat up by Arkansas. Now, the Tigers' defense has given up 500 yards or more in each of their last 3 games. It's a great sign for Will Rogers, who's 7th in the nation, the Mississippi State quarterback. He's matching up against an Auburn defense that is 4th best in the SEC, and Auburn pass defense 4th best in the SEC. But Auburn's also dead last in the SEC in running defense. And while it's not necessarily Mike Leach's style to ground and pound, Bulldogs running back Dylan Johnson's averaging over 6 yards per carry on the year. This game for me, though, is about Auburn's offense or lack thereof. Auburn's been outgained in 5 of their 6 games against Power 5 opponents. They're 3rd to last in passing yards, 2nd to last in points scored, and they're only averaging 21 points per game in conference play. This is an Auburn defense that's given up 40 points in at least 3 straight games. I know that there's this ideology that all of a sudden teams will get a lift when they fire their head coach. Not this week. Mississippi State rolls. I'll lay the 12.5.
I like it. I really, really do. And I actually think I'm going to tail you on it. And sorry to our producer, Jacob, I'm pulling an audible right now because my best bet of the day was Tennessee plus 9.5. I'm switching it up. The more I look at this Clemson Notre Dame game, I really like Notre Dame and the points here. Notre Dame plus 4. I told you the last time Clemson played in front of Touchdown Jesus, they were ranked number 1. It ended in a loss. That was back in 2020, one of the best games I've watched over the last couple of years. And I know this year they have a real shot to win the ACC and possibly get to the college football playoffs. Not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso would like to say. This is a really good spot for Notre Dame. I know they've been up and down all season. For some reason, when they get into the bright lights, the big game under the lights, they show up and they show out. And this is one of Marcus Freeman's first really big games as a head coach. And I really feel with the weather going on right now, you have to check the Doppler radar. ND's size up front can slow down Clemson's run game. And I don't think DJU will be able to throw the ball like we're typically used to seeing. I mean, I know the wind is going to slow down a little bit. It's not going to be quite the 40-mile-an-hour winds that we're going to see during the day. It's still 20, 25-mile-an-hour winds. You ain't throwing a ton of passes into 20-mile-an-hour wind. It's nuts for this game. Massive wind, massive rain. Also, Notre Dame dropped 40-plus points on the ACC's 2 best teams, both in wins. And ND has won 26 straight regular season games against ACC opponents. I feel like they're going to show up. They're going to show out for this game at home in front of Touchdown Jesus. They're going to want to spoil it for Clemson. And I just feel like games are won in the trenches and games are won on defense. And I feel like Notre Dame's defense and their D-line is going to be able to hold off Clemson's run game. And I think that they're going to be able to take advantage at home. So Notre Dame and the points, that's my play of the day. I also have Tennessee plus 9.5, but that's not going to be my play of the day anymore. So Notre Dame plus 4. Lock it in, baby. That's it for us today. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Mark Zinno, Lauren Jabara. Best of luck tonight, you guys, with Week 10. We'll see you tomorrow for some NFL football Week 9. Until then, let's get it. Let's bet it.